Indiana Jones is one of the most iconic action-adventure movie franchises of all time, being instantly recognizable to fans across generations. The most iconic movies of the franchise being the first three, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade. The movies that were released after the original trilogy would be shunned by fans for not meeting the expectations and standards of the community. These movies being The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and The Dial of Destiny. And don't worry, I'm not going to be defending these movies in today's video. If anything, today I will be doubling down on why those movies are bad, while simply questioning the consistency of the standards of the fandom. The famous saying, "There are only 3 Indiana Jones movies," is in reference to the original trilogy, which was previously discussed, suggesting that all 3 of them have some sort of consistent quality among them. Me, being the person that I am, find this hilarious, considering that if we were consistent with our criticisms of the later 2 and our standards of the first, we would find that one of these movies doesn't really hold its own that much. In fact, this movie falls so far that I am confident in saying that it is worse than even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yes, today, ladies and gentlemen, a sacred cow will be slaughtered. Today we will be proving once and for all why Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom does not hold up. So right off the bat, we get a choreographed song and dance sequence to accompany the opening credits, which isn't bad. It's completely fine, except for the fact that they walk into a massive dragon head and completely leave the restaurant in its entirety, which is just bizarre to me. From the perspective of the dining hall, all of the women just jumped into the big head and then just heard tap dancing from the other room. And also, why is there a massive black box behind the restaurant? Couldn't all of this be used for more dining space? The only dancing the guests get to see is when Willie comes out of the giant dragon head with a giant red cloth that's made up of 15 separate red ribbons that are magically stitched together within one singular cut between 2 shots. Ah, the magic of editing. And in terms of immersion, this is not a great example of this. To backtrack a bit, the dancers run into the dragon head into this giant black box. We are quite literally taking a sidestep for the sake of visuals. Nothing in the opening credits is immersing us in anything relating to the film. We are taken out of it. Singing and tap dancing has nothing to do with the rest of the film. There's cult worship, which I guess could be considered singing, and celebratory dancing at the end of the movie, but both of these examples are a stretch. The only thing that the song and dance do narratively is introduce us to Willie Scott, and while being a little clumsy, has some sense of charm about her. Let's hope that this characteristic isn't completely ruined throughout the rest of the movie. In terms of interacting with the audience, we get one shot of the villain clapping for 1 second, so I guess that's all we need. And adding on to the dance itself, the choreography isn't that great. A lot of the dancers aren't synced up very well, and also one of these dancers is Kathleen Kennedy, apparently. And if you're one of these people whose blood boils as soon as you set your eyes on her, then here you go. That's another reason to hate this movie, I guess. You're probably thinking it's ridiculous to start off a critique video with a nitpick about how an opening credits scene starts the movie. But I have a point to this. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, we open with a credits sequence. We see a man standing tall leading a group of explorers behind him. We see the men run in fear when they see a shrine, but the leader does not hesitate to look for clues. We see our leader inspect poisoned darts on a tree, concluding that they were fresh. With a sign that the enemy is close, our hero does not fear. Then as he concentrates on the maps, one of his men decides to betray him, but he's too slow to the shot, leading our hero to grab the betrayer's gun with his trusty whip and leave him with no other option but to run. As our leader comes out of the shadows, we see that this hero is Indiana Jones. Being that it's the first of the trilogy, it introduces us to our main character and tells us who he is. And it does just that. It establishes that he's a leader without fear, that always seeks an adventure. It also tells us that he's very observant and aware of his surroundings, being able to pick up on clues and information as to what is going on in the jungle. We also see that he ain't no wimp and ain't scared of no shrine. On top of this, we see the people that he surrounds himself with, people that are capable but not necessarily trustworthy. You see how much this this opening scene told us. Now, what did Temple of Doom show us? Dancing woman, and clapping villain, and that's pretty much it. You might be saying, but Andrew, it's the second movie in the franchise. Since the previous movie established Indy as a character, we don't need any of that in this movie. And I would say no, because this movie is a prequel to Raiders. So I would think introducing your main character under a new setting and context might be important, considering that this version of the character has not gone through any of the development of the previous movie. How does an anthropologist navigate a world of crime and thievery? That sounds like a really interesting idea for a movie, or even an opening credits scene. But fine, for some reason we can't do that. God, Blue Beetle's opening credits scene gave us more context than this movie. Another interesting idea would be to have an opening credits scene that shows us the villain and how he operates his crime empire, so that we fully understand the world in which Indy is stepping his toes into. This sounds really interesting, but no, all you get is the man clapping, and that's all you need, so be happy and consume the product. After the song and dance is over, they run across the dining room, passing everyone, and walk up the staircase. I don't understand why they have to run across the entire room and up the staircase to leave, considering that there's a giant dragon head on stage that they can go through, and I assume that the backstage rooms are, you know, behind the stage. We then see famous archaeologist Indiana Jones walk down the stairs, while the women are walking up the stairs. This is symbolizing the idea that Indiana Jones is a sexist pig. A waiter, who is secretly Indy's friend, stops to tell him to be careful. That's interesting. I wonder if Indy's gonna take that advice. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. Anyway, Indiana Jones walks up and sits at the table of Lau and his goons. He introduces himself in Chinese, and Lau is surprised that he can speak his language. I would like to point out the complete lack of any charisma in Harrison Ford's acting throughout this entire scene.
Only on special occasions.
Anyway, Lau asks Indy if he was able to find Nurhachi. Indy says this.
You know I did. Last night one of your boys tried to get Nurhachi without paying for him.
The implications of this line are interesting. The previous night, one of Lau's goons, specifically Lau's son, either interfered with Indy's search or broke into Indy's hotel room in order to steal Nurhachi from him without paying for it later. Indy obviously stopped the son, but this violent off-screen exchange left Lau's son missing his left index finger. This tells us a lot about Lau's character and how he does business. He's willing to do anything to obtain what he wants, including going against his own word, and even killing Indy to obtain Nurhachi. Keyword here is killing. Lau responds by saying that Indy insulted his family and his son. And Indy says this.
No, you've insulted me. I spared his life.
This tells us that respect is very important to Lao She, and humiliating his family will not be tolerated. Then goon number 2 stands up and speaks angrily, and then we see Willie Scott walks up to Lao, asking him if he's going to introduce her to this new guest. So Lao introduces her. Then we get an attempt at humor.
Well, I thought archaeologists were always funny little men searching for their mommies.
Mummies.
Then Lau threatens Indy by having his son point a gun at him slowly as to not scare the others in the restaurant. But what does pointing a gun at Indy do at this point? You can't kill him because he still has Nurhachi. So pointing a gun at him is useless. What are you doing? Indy could just say no and walk away, and Lau could do nothing. Lau could kill him, and it still does nothing. You still don't have Nurhachi. Indy just takes Willie Scott hostage and tells him to put the gun away, and Lau just does it like nothing happened. Oh, I guess put the gun away, it doesn't matter anymore. Aw shucks, we'll shoot him next time. The reason I bring this up is because Lau doesn't need to do any of this, and is just being difficult for no reason, other than just being difficult. Then Indy, while still holding Willie Scott hostage, asks for the diamond. Lau then puts a sack on the turntable and spins it around to Indy. Indy then tells Willie to open it. She opens it, revealing a handful of coins, which is not what Indy asked for, restating that he wants the diamond. So Willie puts the coins back on the turntable and spins it over to Lau. Lau then begrudgingly puts the diamond onto the turntable, while his son puts a drink on the table as well, and swings it over to Indy. Willie unwraps the gift and sees the diamond. Indy then stabs her again, and she gives it to him. Lau looks angry, and Indy picks up the suspicious-looking drink, and almost takes a sip of it, but Willie gets up and starts complaining.
He put 2 holes in
in my dress from Paris.
How much pressure does Indy have to put on this dress in order to leave visible marks on it? If he's putting that much pressure into it, I feel like holes in your dress is not the thing that you should be worried about, Willie. It should be going to the emergency room. Lau then orders Indy to give him nurhachi. Indy then motions at the waiter from earlier, and he brings the urn to the turntable. Lau picks it up and marvels at the remains of Nurhaci, the first emperor of the Manchu dynasty. Indy says, "Welcome home, old boy," while taking a sip of the drink given to him by the sun. Then Lau and his goons look up and start laughing at Indy. Lau says that the vial he is now holding is the antidote to the poison that he just drank. Alright, so it's time to break down why Indiana Jones, famous archaeologist, is stupid for drinking the poison. The main reason being is that the person who gave the drink to Indy is a guy who tried to kill him the night before and has been insulted by Indy because of this. Other reasons include the fact that Lau has been incredibly difficult to work with during the ongoing deal and tried irrationally pointing a gun at Indy in an attempt to threaten him. Imagine if instead of taking this drink, Indy said, "Nah, I'm good, thank you," and asked the waiter for a drink rather than drinking the one that was given to him by a group of people who was actively trying to kill him. But this is ignoring the fact that poisoning Indy in the first place is incredibly inefficient at killing/intimidating him. If the poison worked like Lau says later and actually works quickly, Indy could have been dead before even being able to give them Nurhaci. And if Lao She really knew Indy as much as he should at this point, he would know that Indy would do anything except give him the diamond. And if he does give him the diamond, he's gonna do it in the most difficult way possible. So this really just boils down to Lau wanting to kill Indy for some reason. In that case, why tell Indy about the existence of an antidote? Just let him die in the chaos. Or better question, why kill him with poison? Just shoot him. You shoot this guy later, just shoot Indy next. Also, what is up with this diamond and why do you want to keep it so much? And better yet, why does Indy want it? If this younger version of Indiana Jones is supposed to be all about fortune and glory, then wouldn't he be fine with obtaining a cash equivalent of the diamond? Can I please get an explanation as to what this diamond is so I can fully understand the decisions these characters are making? No? Well, okay, moving on. By the way, people think this is a good movie. Anyway, after Indy gets poisoned, he puts the diamond on the table and demands the antidote from Lau while taking Willie Scott hostage again.
Lau!
You keep it a go. I find another.
So yeah, this is apparently just a giant ruse to kill Indy for some reason. Again, you can just shoot him, but whatever. A waiter comes up beside Indiana Jones, puts a gun at Lau under his plate. Indy explains that the waiter is actually an old friend named Wu Han. Indy starts to slur his words a bit, but tells Lau to give him the antidote. The room erupts with the sound of champagne bottles opening, and on top of this we hear glass shattering. We see the glass on Wu's plate has been broken. Wu picks up the glass confused, and then we see blood soak into his shirt. Then we see one of Lau's goons with a gun. Okay, let's break this down. The goon used the noise of popping champagne bottles to hide his gun? No, I'm not buying this at all. I would be able to if this movie followed the same broken logic like so many other movies do, and say that if you put a suppressor on a gun, then it's completely fine. But no, that's not what's going on here. There is no suppressor on the weapon, it is just a normal revolver. Also, I want to point out that there's no entry point on the clothes that Wu is wearing. This is really just a nitpick, I just think it's funny. And before anyone starts saying, oh, well, maybe the suppressor wasn't invented yet. Shut up. The suppressor was invented around 1902 and got a patent in 1909, and Temple of Doom takes place in 1935, a whole 33 years after the invention of the suppressor. Anyway, Wu drops his gun on the table and Lau's son hides it. Wu then dies in Indy's arms and talks about all the adventures that they went on together. That would have been really nice to see, but no, for some reason, we're watching the end of one story in the opening scene of a movie. Imagine if Raiders started off with Indy already having the relic in his possession and we saw him leaving the temple. Would it be cool? I guess. But there would be a bunch of character establishing and exposition that you would just be missing. God, imagine if Crusade just opened with the hat raise. It would be cool, I guess, but you would have missed this iconic line.
You lost today, kid. But it doesn't mean you have to like it.
Peak. Indy gets up and starts to stumble as the poison is affecting him more and more. While Lau is taunting him, he stumbles into a rotisserie cart, grabbing one of the metal skewers and throws it at a goon and kills him. Out of pure reaction, the goon fires the gun before dying, and now the entire dining room is in panic. The idea of keeping anything secret is now out the window. Indy reaches for the antidote and it falls off the table. Oof. Quite unlucky. Lau's son, not doing anything at all in this moment, gets punched out of his seat and onto the floor by Indy. During this, Willie picks up the diamond and just starts looking at it. Indy insults Lau in Chinese, and Lau retorts. Then Indy is grabbed off the table by another random goon and knocks the diamond out of Willie's hand. God forbid Willie move at all. The diamond and the antidote are both knocked into a crowd of people running, and Indy is pinned to another table. Indy hits a goon on the head with a bottle and then is punched into the crowd. He then turns around and punches a woman. Indy, I know you're dying and all, but this is a woman just passing through. She's minding her own business. Also, I thought the poison worked quickly. Why is it taking 5 minutes for it to actually kill him? And honestly, it's barely affecting him because he's able to still throw punches and take people out. But whatever, I guess time is relative. Anyway, while Willie is looking for the diamond in the crowd, Indy gets thrown onto a cart and pushed into the jazz band. Okay, goons, that'll show them. I just think it's hilarious that none of these goons have guns. Both Lau's son and the dead goon had guns. Even Wuhan had a gun, but these guys, no. They're not important enough to have guns. Then Indy sees the antidote in the crowd and starts looking for it and runs into Willie. Then the dancers come out again and are horrified by the sight of Indiana Jones. Lau comes out of the kitchen with a bunch of goons and they begin to throw hatchets like spears? That's not how hatchets work. Also, I'm gonna say it again, why do none of them have guns? Your cover is completely blown. There is no stealth needed anymore. Just shoot Indy. Anyway, Indy throws this drum symbol that could have been easily dodged at this stormtrooper, goon, and he falls taking down 2 bowls of ice. Willie is about to get the diamond when all the ice comes flooding in, and she cries in sorrow. Oh, the tragedy. Even though the diamond is easily distinguishable from the ice, but whatever. I guess Willie forgot to put in her contacts today. But she does find the antidote and puts it in her bra while Indy is yelling for her to stay there. Indy continues to fight off goons while he's slowly dying to the quote-unquote fast-working poison. And Lau's son has grabbed a Tommy gun and starts blasting at Indy. I would like to remind everyone that Lau's son had not 1, but 2 guns in his possession, meaning that he doesn't need to get another one. He could just stand up and shoot Indy, but I guess he forgot or something. He starts blasting, except absolutely none of the shots hit Indy when they absolutely should have. One of them even hits the sword that Indy's holding. Okay, so it must be true that Han Solo is a wielder of the Force. And to address the remarks that some of you might be making, saying that I am nitpicking, don't worry. The plot armor only gets worse from here. Anyway, Indy cuts the rope of the giant symbol and uses it as cover as the brain-dead goon just wastes ammo by shooting at it. Maybe, and this might be a stretch of the imagination, just run around the symbol and shoot at an angle where you can actually see Indy and shoot him. Whatever, I don't care anymore. Indy grabs Willie Scott and jumps out of the window and tumbles down to street level and get in a taxi without a scratch on him. We are then introduced to Short Round, the saving grace of this movie. Short Round drives off and Lau gets some goons together to chase them. Indy gets a little handsy with Willie and forcefully grabs the antidote from her bra. Wow, you're probably thinking that Indy would apologize for this later and explain himself and why he did what he did. That seems like a good thing to do. Well, he doesn't and treats her like a nuisance during the entire movie, until the very end where they have a kiss that isn't earned in the slightest. While Lau is shooting at Indy, Indy asks Willie to hold his gun, and she drops it out of the window. And we get this.
Where's my gun?
I burnt my fingers and I cracked a nail!
Man, Willie Scott is a pretty insufferable and annoying character. I hope we aren't stuck with her for the rest of the movie. Anyway, we stop at an airport and Art Weber has been able to get him a cargo plane to escape in. So Short Round and Indiana Jones hop into the plane, leaving Willie Scott alone. Wait, Willie gets on the plane? Indy, you don't need her anymore. She gave you the antidote. That's all you need from her. Let her go. Lau doesn't even care about her. He just wants Indy dead. But Andrew, Indy is saving her from Lau. Okay, but never at any point does Lau ever say anything that would suggest that he wants to kill Willie. And even if there was, she could easily explain to Lau that Indy took her hostage and then dumped her as soon as he got the antidote. So I don't think there's much saving to do in that case. But fine, whatever. I'll roll with that explanation for now. Willie then starts complaining about it being a cargo plane, and Art Weber explains that it's the best he could do on such short notice. When did Indy contact Art exactly? Because I assume he would have scheduled this at least 2 days in advance or something, considering Indy would have had to get here, look for the remains of Nurhachi, and then go deliver it to Lau. Unless Indy knew that the deal was going to go south and scheduled it right before the meeting, even though there is no evidence of Indy knowing that the deal was going to go bad, and there's no evidence of him even contacting Art beforehand. Indy didn't pull out his iPhone and text him, so by short notice, they must mean right as Short Round pulled up to the airport. In that case, it's incredibly convenient that there's a small cargo plane up and running to take off exactly when Indy needs to get there. Art also recognizes Willie Scott as famous American female vocalist. Thank you for the exposition that we already knew. Lau and his goons arrive, but they're too late as Indy is already on the plane. Indy taunts Lau and closes the door, and it's revealed that the plane is owned by Lao She. Okay, so this could explain why the plane is conveniently able to take off right when Indiana needs to. It would have been really unlucky for Lau if Indy went to a different airport, but okay. Lau is stupid enough to rashly point guns at Indy and hire completely incompetent goons who fail at every task they are given, but is smart enough to set up a plane at the exact place and time Indy escapes. Yeah, this is a good movie, guys, trust me. Anyway, Indy starts setting up a place to sleep on the plane, and we get this attempt at humor.
So what are you supposed to be, a lion tamer?
I'm allowing you to tag along.
Oh wait, am I supposed to laugh at this? What does Indy mean by allowing her to tag along? He has just stuffed her into a cargo plane and expects her to be okay with it? Let's break down the story from Willie's perspective. You open up with a song and dance, and after this, you go to Lao She's table and talk to friends. You are introduced to a man named Indiana Jones, famous archaeologist. And the same man takes you hostage twice, then later during the chaos of trying to find the diamond, he grabs you up and throws you out a window, barreling down to street level, and shoves you in a taxi cab being driven by a child. Then, while being shot at, you are sexually assaulted by the same man. Then, when getting to the airport, instead of letting you go, you are then told to get onto the cargo plane without any context. I am once again asking, what does Indiana Jones, famous archaeologist, mean when he says allowing? Because up to this point, he has only caused Willie mental trauma and emotional anguish. Anyway, while Indy, Willie, and Short Round are sleeping, the pilots dump the fuel, take the parachutes, and jump out of the plane. Okay. So this is Lau's genius plan to kill Indiana Jones? You know what works really well? Guns. Willie notices there's no pilots and alerts Indy of this. Indy then goes to the front of the plane and starts trying to figure out how to fly it on the spot. I actually like this bit where he's attempting to learn how to fly and is figuring out what controls do what. It's a nice piece of character building showing that he's quick on his feet, but this really doesn't go anywhere since he elects not to steer the plane because of lack of fuel. Shorty says there's no parachutes left, so Indy and gang are in some pretty deep trouble. I don't know how to lead up to what is about to happen, so I'm just gonna let it play out for a bit. I'm sorry, but do I really need to explain why this is stupid? You might be saying, oh, Andrew, this is nitpicking. No, stop talking. This is a case of major plot armor for Indy and the crew. This is worse than climbing into a fridge and surviving. You might also start saying, oh, well, on Mythbusters, they made it work. Yeah, they did. Kind of. But they rigged it completely differently from how it is in the movie. They tried doing the movie version, which we just saw, and then they tried doing the best case scenario, which was only one person using the raft as a parachute instead of a boat. And even then, you would be critically injured, and your chances of survival are slim to none. Even being able to craft the makeshift parachute in the small time given would have been practically impossible. And I still know that there's some of you disgusting creatures out there trying to defend this. So let me break it down one last time for you. Number one, can a raft slow your descent to the ground? Yes, but not by much. It's true that there's more surface area if it were just Indy, Willie, and Shorty falling by themselves, meaning that they would indeed fall slower, but it's still not enough to slow you down as much as a parachute would. Number two, could you keep a raft upright while falling? Maybe, but you would have to keep your center of gravity as close as possible to the center of the raft in order to keep it from spinning and turning you into a giant red puddle on the ground. Number three, and this is the big one, 1, the fall damage. The list of pros is very small, but we'll acknowledge them anyway. Number 1, the raft is going to slow you down a little bit. Again, not by much. Number 2, you are landing on snow rather than a more hard surface like concrete or a mountain cliffside. Number 3, you are landing on a slight slope, which means that a small percentage of your impact will be absorbed as you go down the slope. Alright, now here are the cons and why none of what I just said matters at all. Number 1, the snow is not deep or fluffy at all, so you are really just landing on a mountain. If you look at the footage, you can see that within 2 frames of landing, they are already bouncing back up, rendering the snow obsolete. Secondly is the body position, and that isn't in our hero's favor at all. If you want the greatest chance of survival, you would jump out of the plane feet first so that your legs can take most of the impact. But Indy is laying down, exposing his head and all of his vital organs to the full force of the impact. They should all be a giant puddle of red guts at this point. Thirdly, and this is the most damning one, speed of descent. If we do some quick math, we come to the conclusion that Indy and crew are falling at a rate of 45 miles per hour, which gives them around a 15% chance of survival, which, yeah, isn't great. But then you factor in that these people falling in the raft aren't even real people. They're just dummies. You see, if we replace these dummies with their real-life counterparts, the raft would be falling at a rate of 65 miles an hour, which is completely off the charts for survivability. So yeah, there is a less than 0.01% chance of them surviving. Sure, you can buy it if you're stupid, but I'm not stupid, so I'm not buying it. Anyway, they miraculously survive this and make their way down the stream and conveniently don't run into any trees and end up running into this mysterious man who has teleportation powers, because when Indy and crew start following and walking past them, in the next shot, he's in front of them. This criticism doesn't affect the story at all, but again, I just think it's funny. I wonder if this guy is an ancient ancestor of Michael Myers and can instantly travel to wherever he wants to. That, or he just runs really fast and can catch up to them. Anyway, they make their way down to a village and the people start surrounding them. They invite them to rest and eat, and we get more unfunny jokes.
I can't eat this.
That's more food than these people eat in a week. They're starving.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can have
Eat it.
I'm not hungry.
You're insulting them and you're embarrassing me. Eat it.
Eat it.
This is the beginning of Willie becoming more and more insufferable, especially with food. I also like the line, "You're embarrassing me." It's not like Willie wants to be here. This is your fault, Indy. You should be embarrassed. Anyway, Indy asks for a guide to Delhi, but the man wants him to go to Pankot. Pankot is completely out of the way of Delhi, but the man explains that the palace hasn't been abandoned, as Indy presumed, and that it holds the power of the dark light, and that is the place where they killed his people. He goes on to explain that the people of Pankot Palace stole the sacred stone from the village, and that caused the death and destruction to their village. Also, there's a cute moment with Shorty. I think it's neat. We then go outside to the place where the stone was kept. The man begins to describe the horrible things that have happened since the stone was stolen. Dead livestock, fields on fire, and kidnapped children. Later that day, a mysterious child shows up struggling to stay conscious. Indy holds the boy while he chants Sankara. The boy gives Indy a piece of linen with some writing on it, and it has an illustration of 2 people sitting. Then later, Indy has decided to leave the village and climb up to this hill for some reason. I guess he needed to think because he's quirky. And he needs to be by himself because he's quirky. Even though the village could provide him with light while it's pitch black outside, but whatever. I'm not an archaeologist. Again, this is a nitpick. I just think it's funny. Anyway, Shorty runs up the hill and tells Indy that the boy that showed up earlier escaped from the palace, and that is where the rest of the village's children are. Indy comes to the conclusion that the rock that was stolen from the village was one of the Shankara stones. The next day, Indy and Shorty go to the palace while Willie Scott is set up with a guide to get her to Delhi so that she can go back home. Oh wait, that's not what happens? Oh, it's the exact opposite of that? So you're telling me Indiana Jones, famous archaeologist, has decided to just keep this woman hostage. Why is she going to Pankot Palace with Indy? There's no reason for her to go. She has no skills that could benefit the team whatsoever. She can sing, I guess, but other than that, she provides 0 value. If anything, she's a liability to the team considering that she's not physically fit, not skilled at fighting, and is also really, really, really loud. And before any of you people in the comments start typing about and saying, Andrew, she's only going because Pankot is on the way to Delhi. No, that's not what happens. If you watch the movie, you'll know that Indiana Jones, famous archaeologist, says this.
Can you provide us with a guide to take us to Delhi? I'm a professor. I have to get back to my university.
Yes, Sajnu will guide you. On the way to Delhi, you will stop at Pankot.
Bangkok is not on the way to Delhi.
So yes, Indiana Jones, famous archaeologist, is taking a woman around for no reason other than just because we want boobs on the screen. But Andrew, he's only taking her because he doesn't think Pankot Palace is that much of a big deal. No! He should know that it's a big deal, considering that this child has just come up from Pankot Palace and has told everyone that what they were thinking was true. Pankot Palace stole all the children and burned their crops. Oh, and on top of that, why is Short Round going? I'm just observing, but maybe it's not a good idea to take the child to the place where children have been kidnapped by a death cult. I'm losing my mind. So Indiana Jones, famous archaeologist, is a moron. I need to take my shirt off. I'm sweating. And to double down on the fact that Willie is a complete liability to the team, she actively slows them down by having a mental breakdown.
I was happy in Shanghai. My friends were rich. We went to parties all the time in limousines. I hate being outside.
She does not want to be here. She's having a meltdown. Indy, at this point, you should let her go home. You're gonna do that, right? Right? Oh no! We're just gonna sit at camp now because we've only traveled a couple miles. So we're just gonna sit here while this woman who clearly doesn't want to be here gets more and more uncomfortable with the environment around her. Anyway, it's nighttime and Indy and Shorty are playing a game of poker while Willie is drying her clothes.
Where did you find your little bodyguard?
I didn't find him. I caught him. Shorty's family were killed when the Japanese bombed Shanghai. He's been living on the street since he was 4. I caught him trying to pick my pocket. Didn't I, short stuff?
This seems like a weird conversation to have with the child right there. It's said so casually as well, even though it's probably a traumatic experience for Short Round. This scene could have been a conversation during the travel to the palace. Maybe instead of having Willie have a mental breakdown and being an all-around nuisance that Indy keeps around for some reason, she could ask this same question to Indy and Indy could talk about it on the ride there. Cut some time off the script, why don't you? This movie's already long enough. To cement my point, compare this scene to Lord of the Rings, where Theoden is telling Aragorn about Éowyn's past and how she's became a daughter to him. This scene builds characters in 3 ways. We get Theoden's regret for not spending more time with her as a father rather than a king. We get Aragorn's reaction to this and we see him change his view of her throughout the movie. We also get more backstory for Éowyn, building her more and making her a stronger character because of this. And in Temple of Doom, it just feels like exposition because we need it. It also doesn't help that the scene is cut short by funny screaming woman. Is this scene bad? No, not really. It serves all the functional purposes it needs to, but it could have been so much better if it was written in a different context. Willie then asks about the piece of cloth that Indy has been carrying around. Indiana explains that the cloth is a piece to an old manuscript, and it's the Legend of Sankara. My question so far is, how did this child get a piece of the manuscript, and how did he then just escape? Willie then makes fun of the rocks, and then they all go to bed. Wow, so funny, haha. The next day, we get more montage of the group traveling to Pankot Palace. They stop, and one of the guides is scared of something, so Indy goes to investigate it. Indy finds a statue covered in fresh blood, with severed thumbs and fingers. Because of this, the guides are scared and run off back to their village with the elephants. Willie does the most in-character thing and screams at them. Indy says that they'll walk to the palace from here, since the palace is within viewing distance. They enter the palace and are met by Chatter Lao, the Prime Minister. Then later that day, Chatter and Indiana Jones walk through the palace and he is introduced to Captain Blumbert. Yes, that is actually his name. And Shorty is scared of women. Based. Everyone gets around to dinner and Chatter introduces the guests to the Maharaja, the guardian of Pankot's tradition. Anyway, Indiana Jones is talking to Chatter and Blumbert, making small talk and, you know, small things. The mutiny of 1857, the Thuggee, and the worship of Kali with human sacrifices. You know, the usual. This conversation leads to them talking about the worship of Kali and how it was killed off by the British. But Indy believes that it's continuing because of what happened to the village. Chatter plays this down by being some peasant folklore. Indy decides to dig deeper in the conversation and says this.
You know, the villagers also told us Pankot Palace had taken something.
Chatter takes offense to this, saying that Indy has insulted the host. Indy responds,
I'm sorry. Thought we were talking about folklore.
As the tensions rise in this scene, Captain Blumbert asks what exactly was stolen. Indy says that it was one of their sacred rocks. Chatter scoffs and laughs, making fun of the fact that the village would make such a big deal out of something as worthless as a rock. Then Indy says that he believes that the rock is one of the Sankara stones. Chatter plays that down by saying that vicious rumors are everywhere, and saying that there are rumors about Indy and how he was allegedly a grave robber in Honduras. Indy being a grave robber sounds like a pretty interesting story. Way more interesting than the one that we're watching right now. The conversation ends with the child giving an enlightening speech.
I thought the stories were told to frighten children. Later I learnt the Thuggee cult was once real and did of unspeakable things. I'm ashamed of what happened here so many years ago, and I assure you, this will never happen again in my kingdom.
Dang, alright, preach, king. I cut around some stuff in the scene, but overall I would say that this was decent. Dare I say, good. But you know what makes it not good? Dare I say bad? Terrible and slightly racist comedy. During the dinner scene and while they're talking, we see Willie and Shorty experiencing the cultural food of the region, including big pregnant snakes, big beetles, eyeball soup, and chilled monkey brains. This only exists as shock horror / comedy for the sake of having comedy and shock horror. Oh, Willie doesn't like exotic food? Oh, so funny. We're gonna cut away from this somewhat intense dialogue scene with Indiana, because nobody cares about that. We want to see the funny haha. We want to laugh. Stop making me think. I want to turn my brain off and point at the screen and say, haha, their culture is funny. I think if these food scenes were completely cut from the movie, it would have been a good scene. But there they are, and it's terrible. Now, to hammer down on the slightly racist claims I made earlier, the main problem with this scene is how the Indians are made into a cheap punchline. Haha, they eat weird food, like monkey brains. Isn't that funny? They have a child as a cultural leader. Isn't that funny? Now let me defend Lucas and Spielberg for a second. To clarify, I'm not defending the movie at all, but I am defending the artist's intention when it comes to this scene. While talking to the people on the internet and scrolling through 10-year-old forums, I came across some very interesting information about the second act specifically. A lot of people recall that the novelization clears up some of these issues, like the food being very unfriendly to Hindu culture, and since a lot of novelizations of movies are based on early drafts of the script, I went down a rabbit hole looking for just that. And looky here, on pages 51 and 57, we see that the script acknowledges that the food is very weird. Seeing the meat being served, Indiana looks across the table at Blumbert, who seems equally puzzled. So this was a simple scene that was just gonna have Indiana Jones look over at Blumbert, not say anything, and just kind of be like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought these people were vegan. Then Indiana Jones talks about it specifically later after the dinner happened. Indiana Jones comes out of the pavilion into the garden with Captain Blumbert, and they talk quietly. Rather bizarre menu, wouldn't you say? Even if they were trying to scare us away, a devout Hindu would never touch meat. Indy then looks around, makes you wonder what these people are. Now that, my friend, would have been nice to see, but that, my friend, is not in the movie. So it's clear that it was Lucas and Spielberg's intention for this absurd dinner scene to be a significant plot point to raise Indiana's suspicions about the Thuggee cult and how the palace plays into that. But is any of this in the actual movie? No. Not a single word. I'm speechless. But I'm gonna keep talking. You know what scene they could have cut out to specifically fit this one in? I don't know. Maybe the campfire scene? Or the completely useless opening credits scene? I don't know, just to name a few. I'm not even looking at the script right now. I'm just so confused how they thought it would be okay to cut this. This explains all of it. Why would you cut this? I have no idea why they would cut out such a vital scene from the script that would have fixed your biggest meta issue with the movie, but I guess unintentional racism wasn't a big deal back in the 80s. So in conclusion, when you cut out vital information from your movie that gives context to culturally insensitive things, it will come off as culturally insensitive. Anyway, then Indiana Jones and Short Round are walking back to their room, and Indy decides to stop by Willie's room. She opens the door, and Indy says that he has something for her, and she continues to be a rude person. Indy turns around and starts eating the fresh fruit that he got from the dinner, and Willie starts eating the apple and takes the plate. She then says this:
Maybe you could be my palace slave.
"Don't worry, Willie. There's a bunch of kidnapped children in the basement to enslave. I'm sure Indy wouldn't mind, considering that he has one of his own." And then Indy tries to rizz Willie up for some reason. These two people have absolutely hated each other this entire movie, but now they have to be flirty because Steven and George said so. And Indy is talking about how he does research and how he has years of field work. I would like to add in that this includes a 15-year-old Marion. So Willie says that she might be too tough to handle. And Indy says that he's had worse. And I absolutely do not, under any circumstances, want to meet the woman that is worse than Willie. Maybe he's talking about one of his students. Then Indy just decides to leave for no good reason. He says it because Willie is too used to getting her own way. So I guess Indy is trying to parent her in some weird way. When he goes to leave, he shuts the doors and then opens them back up. I understand this is a nitpick. I just think it's funny. Anyway, Indy goes to his room and Willie stays in hers. And this becomes a competition for 5 minutes to see who's going to go over to the other room first to sleep with them. And I would like to remind everyone at this moment in time that Short Round is in Indy's room. What are you doing, Indiana Jones? Are you just gonna be doing the business while a literal child is there? I mean, listen, I know Indiana is a terrible person. I feel like this is a bit of a stretch. There's just so many things that you would want to do to make sure the child isn't there. Like if he wakes up, he's just gonna interrupt you. So I'm saying, Indy, stop being stupid. Just go over to Willie's room. It's fine. She's not gonna change just because you're trying to parent her right now. While they're waiting for each other, Indy gets attacked by this guy and Shorty wakes up. Then Willie walks out of the hallway and starts yelling about Indy not going over there and how she slipped through his fingers and how she could have been his greatest adventure, yada yada yada, I don't care. Shorty gets his whip, Indy hangs him by the ceiling fan, even though ceiling fans don't work like that, but we moving on. Then he makes his way over to Willie's room and she expects him to go down, but he's on a mission, looking for spies. He then sees a flower pot in the center of the room and sees that the flowers are moving. He inspects the pillar on the wall and touches it. Ha, boob joke. And pushes into the wall. Okay, so he's able to feel the breeze and see a current running through the flowers in order for them to move. You would think that the secret entrance has some sort of blast of air going through it in order to get through all of that wall to make a noticeable movement for those flowers. But not really. It's not windy at all in there. I'm gonna be honest. Indy can light a torch and he's fine. Indy and Shorty enter this mysterious walkway and walk through the one bug room that's demanded of every Indy movie. They walk into a trap room and I must say, I'm surprised Indy hasn't dragged Willie into danger this time. I'm kind of proud of you. Except you did bring a child here, but you know what? I'll let it go. Shorty then steps on the button to activate the trap and the doors start to seal shut. Then Indy tells Shorty to go against the wall and he sounds super uninterested in him. Brother, you dragged him into this mess. Remember your whole speech about how you abducted him from the streets? Yeah, at least sound like you care about him. You are the reason that he dies tonight. Wouldn't you want him to stay as still as possible so that there's zero chance for him to activate another trap? Indy has to understand that the doors locking are not the worst of the trap, right? Like he knows how traps work. Anyway, then Shorty trips the next trap, which are some fancy spikes that come out of the ceiling. The difference this time is that this trap was connected to a button on the wall. I don't know why you wouldn't just make another button in the floor, because leaning on that specific part of the wall is pretty convenient. Also, if I was someone who was making a booby trap, why would I make it so that there's two buttons to activate the whole thing? Wouldn't you want to make one button that not only closes the doors, but also lowers the ceiling and the spikes? I feel like you would want to put that all on one button. I don't know, man. I'm not going to focus on the flawed mechanics of the booby trap because I don't have time for this and the movie doesn't have time for this, so let's just move on. Indy yells for Willie to help and she decides to come down after screaming and complaining about cobwebs.
We are going to die!
This is the best shot of the movie, all right? It just is. I love how it feels like it should have cut like a couple frames before, but it doesn't. So there's these few frames at the last second of him just looking like Doug Walker, and it's really funny to me, and I like it, and Twitter likes it too, so that's a good thing. They all get out safe, and they come to a cave and find a gap leading to the place of worship for this thuggy cult and the worshiping of Kali. And then the scene happens where the head cult man pulls out the guy's heart. Yeah, this movie is rated rated PG, by the way. And hold on, before people start saying, how is he alive if his heart is ripped out? Indy acknowledges in the movie that it's clearly supposed to be a plot point that these people can accomplish this through their cult magic. The only thing I would like to point out here is how fast the cult leader is able to rip out the guy's heart, but we'll come to that later. Then we see the cult has a stone that was stolen from the village. Indy then decides to leave Shorty and Willie and go down to get the stone. He does some cool adventure moves and gathers the stones, but before leaving, he hears screaming coming from the hallway. We then see Willie and Shorty have been caught by the cult, and Indy finds the working conditions of an apple factory in China. Indy finds the working conditions of an Amazon warehouse. Indy finds the working conditions of CGI artists working for Marvel. Indy finds the kidnapped children from the village. The children have now been enslaved and forced to mine in the caverns. Then Indy is thrown in a cage and locked up with Short Round and some other kidnapped children. Then one of the children start talking and it becomes the biggest exposition dump in the middle of the movie.
I pray to Shiva, let me die, but I do not. Now the evil of Kali take me. They will make me drink the blood of the Kali. Then I'll fall into the black sleep of the Kali Ma.
I find it kind of weird that these children know English. Back when we were in the village, it feels like there was only a small group of people that could speak English in the community. Also, I find it incredibly convenient that this random kid knows everything he needs to in order to become the dumper of exposition for Indy.
What is that?
We become like them. We'll be alive, but like a nightmare. You drink blood, you not wake up from nightmare.
How do you know all of this? Did the cult just sit you guys down in a lecture hall before enslaving you and tell you guys how you will be enslaved? Anyway, after this interaction, Indy is taken to another room and chained to a statue. The cult leader then explains to Indy that there were originally 5 sacred stones, but through the years of being pillaged by the British, they were only able to recover 3 stones, but say that the other 2 are hidden within the caves under the temple. Then they start pouring the blood of Kali into his mouth and he spits it out into their faces. The Child King comes back and grabs an Indiana Jones voodoo doll that has a little hat and a jacket, and it has a little whip. I'm not kidding, this is true. This movie is so stupid. As Indy is being tortured by this voodoo doll, Shorty pushes the kid and Indy starts to get whipped, as well as Shorty. And then they force Indy to drink it. He gets thrown into a room with a lot of candles, for stylistic reasons. And then we see Indy is now possessed and evil. Oh no. Then we cut to the mines and we see Short Round chained up, putting in an honest day's work, and getting yelled at and whipped. Then we see another big problem with the cult, and that is the fact that Shorty begins chopping at his chains. The big problem being, why didn't the cult force feed the blood of Kali to Short Round to make him a mindless drone? But Andrew, maybe the cult doesn't make the children drink the blood of Kali. Okay, but from what the kid told us, all of the child slaves drank it.
We become like them.
He's talking about the children in the mines. Did the writers just forget how their own cult works in their own movie? Anyway, we move on to another cult ritual scene, even though there was one just 10 minutes ago. I guess people here just do it at least twice a day within the span of 10 minutes. And we see Indy is here, as he's under the spell of the blood of Kali. We also see Willie is here, being dragged into the same cage from earlier. And the cult leader rips out her heart and... Wait, that's not what happens? I guess we're just gonna break the established rules of the cult again for the sake of, what exactly? Oh yeah, that's right. Plot armor. The cult leader instead calls to Indy for him to finish the job, and he is the one to rip out her heart, right? Right? Wrong. The only thing he does is stare at Willie, put her hand in the other cuff. It should have been confined beforehand, but whatever. Then she spits on him, and he enjoys it? All right, Indy. I'm not here to kink shame. Then we cut to Shorty chopping away at his chains, and he gets out, and this absolute video game NPC guard just doesn't notice anything. I guess Short Round invested all of his stat points into stealth, so I guess I'll let that slide. He then runs through the slave mines as the guards continue to be NPCs and completely miss where he is, only to notice him just late enough for Shorty to be able to climb up this ladder without being yoinked off like the toddler he is. But I will say, Short Round does the coolest stunt in this movie. bro is a menace. We cut back to the cult and we see that they start to lower Willie into the pit of lava, even though they clearly forgot to pull out her heart, but whatever. The movie is obviously not even attempting to be consistent with the previously established world building, so whatever. Pop off, King. As Willie is hoisted lower and lower into the cavern, and Indy just stands there and smiles while the cult leader continues to chant. Shorty barges into the room and teleports right next to Indy and starts yelling at him. The reason I say teleport is because Shorty seemingly jumps a great distance in between the time that we see him. The first shot we see him in, he is approaching the main sanctuary outside of the pillars. And in the next shot, not only is he right next to Indy, but he seems to have beat up these guards to the point where they've been stun locked for 5 seconds. In recent times, we've been shown time and time again situations where children get the upper hand against grown adults 4 to 5 times their size and either win the fight or escape the chase to make it out alive. This scene, for example, is an interesting situation because we've seemingly cut out the part where Shorty gets out of the guards' hands. In fact, the guards have been so beaten by Shorty that they've seemed to have forgotten about him entirely because the cult leader has to remind them that he exists. Remember, guys, this is a good movie. Anyway, after Shorty is seen again, he starts running around frantically and grabs a torch off the wall and starts burning people alive with it. Then the mechanism that's controlling the chamber that Willie is being lowered into just stops for no reason. What the movie wants us to believe is the guy that Shorty burnt here is the engineer that's controlling the hoist, and him being attacked caused the wheels to stop turning. An easy argument against that is A, the hoist would only start lowering faster because that's how gravity works, and B, that's not even the case, because by the time Shorty starts attacking this man, he has already let go of the wheel and hasn't been holding any levers or switches in some time. So the only reason this hoist stops lowering Willie is because of plot armor to save her so she can be annoying for the remaining 36 minutes and kiss Indy at the end of the movie. There is no reason at all why the hoist stops working other than pure convenience. The other argument is that the hoist has lowered all the way to the bottom, with Willie being evaporated from our eyes. Then Shorty gets the bright idea and gives Indy a 3rd-degree burn to wake him up. What on earth compels Shorty to do this? And see if it wakes him up. No clue. He just does it because why not? And guess what? It works? How convenient! I have no idea how Shorty came to the assumption that fire would cure Indy, and then it's doubly convenient that it works. Anyway, now that Indy has been freed from the spooky spell of the Kali, and Shorty is finally caught by the NPC guards, Indy tells the goons that Shorty is his kill, acting as if he's still one of them. He then grabs Shorty, holds him over the lava pit, and winks at him. And then they fight the goons and Shorty goes for crotch shots like the goblin he is. And in this wide shot, we see that the wheel that controls the hoist is rapidly spinning out of control. Maybe Indy and Shorty should go stop that? Oh, wait a minute. In the next shot, we see the goon activating the wheel. Hey, Steven, I don't mean to nitpick here, but this is a pretty bad editing mistake. I shouldn't have to explain why it is. The wheel is spinning in one scene, and in the next, it's not. And believe it or not, this is an easy problem to fix. All you have to do is switch the shots around in the timeline in the editing software. Is it that big of a deal? No. Is it pretty inconsequential? Yes. But am I petty? Absolutely. The fight continues as Willie Scott is lowered closer and closer to the lava whirlpool, and for some reason doesn't burn alive. I don't know if this movie knows this, but lava and magma are really, really hot. Lava can reach temperatures of over 1200 Celsius, 2200 Fahrenheit, which is hot enough to cause severe burns and even ignite clothing from a distance. And considering the viscosity of the whirlpool and how fast it's going, I'm gonna assume it's reaching that temperature pretty easily. In conclusion, Willie's face should be melted off her body with the rest of her flesh, but with the power of plot armor, she's completely safe. Oh, and by the way, the wheel comes back to be quirky once again. And by quirky, I mean plot convenient, because it just decides to stop again. Now you're probably saying, but Andrew, it must be at the end of the chain if it stops now. And again, I would call you a stupid, dumb, downright fool, because 30 minutes ago we saw a man get lowered into the lava while being in the same cage Willie is. And I must remind you, his flesh started melting off his body before he was even touching the lava. So I guess Willie is just fireproof. It's one of the many benefits of being a famous singer. Indy starts spinning the wheel again to bring Willie back up, and then is attacked by some goons. Takes out the goons, and then sees an opportunity to take out Mahler Ram, which apparently is this guy's name. Even though we never saw him introduced introduced himself to Indy previously in the movie, so it doesn't make sense that Indy would know his name now, but whatever. I guess they did this off screen. Even though Malaram could have introduced himself when Indy and him were talking in this scene, but I guess no. Indy just knows his name, and I only just found out his name while writing the script. Getting back on track here, Indy goes to take a swing at Mala, and he escapes through a trapdoor in the ground. Apparently Malaram is Batman and is prepared for every scenario. This is also another instance of poor editing / directing / general continuity in the movie with what happens in the span of seconds. Malaram is shown to be standing up, leaning on the wall, and then once the movie continues to the next shot, he's laying flat on the ground. Okay. After witnessing this terrible editing sequence, Indy continues to crank the wheel to bring Willie back up and is then attacked again, but this time by Chatter. I assume you forgot who he was because I did too. He's the guy that we met at the gates of the palace. And once Indy has been knocked down, Chatter activates the wheel again, sending Willie back down into the lava. Indy then throws Chatter into the wheel, turning him into a wedge, and then hoists Willie back up while Shorty beats up the guy. Indy gets Willie out of the cage, Willie slaps him, they kiss, and Shorty looks away, looking at the audience of cult worshippers. Which reminds me, all of these followers have just been sitting in the background cheering during the entire fight scene. They never decided to go through a back door or jump across to fight Indy and stop them. But no, they just stand there and cheer like they're video game NPCs in NBA 2K23. Shorty gives Indy his hat back and then they go free the child slave force and fight the goons. Even though the movie went to extreme lengths to tell us that these kids were being mind controlled, but apparently that doesn't apply anymore, and these kids can just leave. Then the head goon goes to Indy, and Indy hits him on the side of the rib cage, and he's completely unfazed. Now we got a super soldier on our hands.
Whoa, is that blackface, dude? Get the out, man!
See, that's exactly why I don't dress up for Halloween, right there.
The goon throws the hammer away, even though he could have used that to fight, and the hammer lands on another guy's head that's just standing there. Then Shorty goes to try to save him, and it does nothing because he's a super soldier. Then this kid Prince from earlier shows up again, and he still has the Indiana Jones voodoo doll, and starts torturing it while Indy is fighting. The fight travels to a conveyor belt that annoys me more than the wheel, but I'll get to that later. Willie helps fight the goon by throwing coal at him, while Indy is being stabbed through the voodoo doll. The kid conveniently pulls the needle out of the doll so that Indy can fight back. The reason this is convenient is because when Indy is being poked, he is completely paralyzed by the pain. But when the needle is pulled out, he's fine. So if the kid would just keep the needle in, he would be paralyzed the entire time and would be crushed to pieces because of the conveyor belt. But whatever, he's a stupid child. It's not like he's a prince or a cultural leader or anything. It's fine. It's just fine. It almost happens actually, but not because the kid is observant. No, the only time the needle is in the doll for an extended period of time is because the doll gets knocked out of the kid's hand, and Shorty then pulls out the needle in the nick of time. Whew, that was a close one. Wait, hold on. Did you see that? After this shot, Indy is almost crushed to death until Shorty saves him, which was the primary source of the tension in this fight 5 seconds ago. But in this scene, he's back to the middle of the conveyor belt? Don't worry about it. Who needs continuity and editing consistency? Look at Indy punch this guy while Shorty punches this kid. Isn't that cool? Look at Indy crush this man to death in a meat blender. Isn't that cool? Look, Shorty is burning this child alive. Isn't that cool? Anyway, Indy punches more goons. Shorty wakes up the kid from the black sleep. The kid tells them how to get out, and the goons start shooting at Indy again and have terrible aim. Shorty keeps beating up grown men with sticks and karate. Malaram shows up and yells at the goons to continue their terrible shooting. Indy does some cool parkour and then they escape from the Temple of Doom. Indy then goes through the right tunnel instead of the left, even though Shorty repeatedly yells for them to go to the left, but whatever. I guess Indy is deaf. Then we get this Fast and Furious style roller coaster, which is way too complex and inefficient, but I guess the Thuggy tribe wanted to be entertained and go on a thrill ride every time they wanted to go through the mines. Then cut back to Malaram and he's telling his goons to spill this giant bucket of water to flood the entire place. Why would he want to do this? I guess to kill Indy, even though this bucket doesn't have nearly enough water to fill up the entire volume of the mines, but whatever. I guess this is Minecraft water and can flow forever and ever. Then Indy and gang fight more goons on the never-ending roller coaster and finally kill kill them. Cut back to Mala Ram as he's finally dumped the big bucket and it's now filling up the caves. Indy then gets the bright idea to use his foot as a brake pad rather than the brake pad that was already there. He legit kicks off the brake pad and just uses his foot instead. It's fine though, because we get this joke.
Water! 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 Water!
Aha, so funny. I'm losing all sense of sanity. Then they start to run away from the water and out to a cliff. I don't want to make fun of the effects here because, you know, the movie is old and I'm going to be more forgiving of effects from the 80s. But considering that Star Wars came out 7 years prior to this movie and looks 10 times better than this film, I think I'm well within my right to call this green screen work rough. Although I will say, the minecart ride was pretty well done. So, you give and you take, you know? Then Willie and Shorty climb up the mountain to safety and come across the rickety bridge to get to safety because that's what Indy said. But like, why? We are never shown why they absolutely need to take the bridge throughout the movie. They don't even cross a bridge while traveling to Pankot's palace in the beginning of the movie. And judging by the terrain surrounding the bridge, I'm pretty sure you could have just not taken the bridge. And considering how long it takes them to travel the bridge, it's very likely for the cultists to catch up with them, or at least see where they're going. And wouldn't you know, that's exactly what happens. In fact, it's even worse than I described, considering they not only caught up to them, but trapped him as well. So they would have been better off running on foot, losing them in the dense jungle. This entire bridge sequence is a classic case of the writers writing around cool action scenes, rather than writing what's logical for the narrative and natural for the story. We've seen it done in recent times with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, and that movie has the exact same issue. Writing in a bunch of contrivances that ruin your story and characters in order to have cool action scenes that still don't work. Cutting back to Indy, we see him running and catching up to the rest of the gang, and look at that. The cultists have caught up to him. They spin their swords and we get a nice callback to the first movie. Ah, a good movie. Well, I guess this is foreshadowing, considering that this is a prequel to Raiders, which makes skipping this movie way easier. Once Indy takes down the cultists, more cultists start chasing him, in spite of the fact that they have guns and could shoot him, but whatever. I guess they forgot they had those. Indy then starts going across the bridge and Willie runs into Mala Ram on the other side of the bridge, trapping them. I would like to remind you that this wouldn't have happened if they ran into the jungle. Also, I would like to point out that Mala Ram can teleport, considering that he just shows up here when the last time we saw him was in the mines dumping a bucket of water. And considering how intense and long that minecart ride is, it would take a while for him to get here specifically. Indy then holds the stones over the bridge, threatening to drop them if he doesn't let Willie and Shorty go. Mahler says this.
Drop them, Dr. Jones! They will be found! You won't!
Okay. I can't believe I have to explain this, but I guess Mala Ram didn't watch Rings of Power for the explanations, so let me break it down for you. Rocks sink, so finding these 3 stones is going to be incredibly difficult once they start rolling downstream and disperse across the bottom of the river. Human bodies, on the other hand, float, like ships. So finding Indy's remains is going to be pretty easy, whether or not he's eaten by those Florida gators. Then Mala Ram orders his men to get closer to Indy, who is in the middle of the bridge. Indiana Jones then raises his machete ready to strike at the rope bridge. He holds this position for a while, and none of the goons think, hey, maybe we should just walk back to the cliff sides and just wait for Indy to walk over to one side and then gang up on him. Mala Ram finally understands what's going on and forces Willie and Shorty onto the bridge. Well, Indy is really screwed now, isn't he? I wonder how he's going to get out of here considering that Willie and Shorty are here and... oh, he just does it anyway. Well, does he tell Willie and Shorty anything to get them off the bridge beforehand? Nope, they just stay on the bridge and Indy tells them to hold on. And everything works out just fine. They don't dislocate any of their limbs from the fall and sudden crash into the cliffside or break any bones or ribs. Absolutely not. Again, people say this movie is good. Then once the bridge has collapsed, Indy and Mala Ram start punching and Shorty yells, I just like to believe that Shorty yelling this reminded Mala Ram that he could rip people's hearts out, and while attempting to rip out Indy's heart, he obviously doesn't because Indy can't die. Indy grabs his hand and pulls it away from him and even makes Mala Ram punch himself. I'm not making this up. People still think this movie is good. After this, Mala starts climbing the ladder and throws one of his men at Indy to stop him. Then he orders his goons to fire from the other side of the canyon, and I'm surprised that they could hear him. He gets up to Willie and Shorty, and instead of trying to grab one of them and throw them off like he did one of his goons, he just lets them step on his fingers. Then he falls back down to Indy's level and slams into him. They then start playing tug of war with the stones, and Indy starts doing a chant, and they start burning through his bag. Mahler grabs one of the stones out of desperation, and it burns his hand, and he falls into the river and gets eaten by a Florida gator. Man, these effects are dated. I'm sorry, they're just so cheesy. Also, right after he falls, he tosses the stone up in the air, and somehow it didn't burn Indy when he catches it a second after it was scorching hot. It's also a little convenient that the stone that Mala Ram happened to grab was the exact same stone the village had, but it's like a 33% chance of happening. Not the most egregious thing that's happened in this movie. Then after this, the British come to save the day, because the British are the good guys. Then Indian gang go back to the village. All of its vegetation has grown back and their clothes are now colorful. But here's the thing. The reason the village was so impoverished to begin with at the beginning of the movie was because the stone was taken from the village, and returning the stone would fix all of their issues. When the stone was taken from the village, the rivers dried up and the livestock turned to dust. But I guess Indy just being in possession of the stone made the village crops come back to life. Are you telling me that the vegetation grew back within the span of less than a day? Yeah, okay, whatever. I'm tired with this movie. Then Willie starts asking Indy about why he didn't just take it. And he says that it would have just been another stone in a rock collection.
No more adventures with you, Dr. Jones.
Sweetheart, after all the fun we've had together.
Oh yeah, what great adventure you've been together, where you've been actively holding her hostage for absolutely no reason whatsoever. The only reason being, ooga booga, we need a pair of boobs on the screen because Steven is trying to get some action. Then once Willie Scott vents her frustrations to Indy, she attempts to leave, and Indy does this.
If by some crazy twist of fate, she goes, no, I don't want to. I'm like, psst, fuck you talking about no? I'm a G, Spider-Man.
That's some Andrew Tate top G energy. And then she decides to kiss the man that kidnapped her. Hey, I think there's a name for that. And roll the credits. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Well, that was something, wasn't it? A lot of people say that this is the darkest Indiana Jones movie ever. And yeah, there's a little bit more gore and hearts being ripped out and crazy food. But other than that, it's probably one of the most lighthearted and whimsical of the trilogy. Definitely the most ridiculous. With impossible stunts, terrible action sequences, and constant screaming, it's kind of hard to take this film seriously. One of the biggest problems I have with the movie is that every exposition scene is filled with constant screaming. If there was an exposition scene in Raiders or Crusade, it always felt like one and kept you engaged as a viewer watching Indy figure out the problem, or finding another clue, or even, God forbid, character development. The Temple of Doom approach is whenever there's an important exposition scene and the viewer might get bored, throw in a screaming woman for good measure, just so the Zoomers have something to laugh at and be entertained by. It honestly comes off as the writers not being confident in their own material, which is understandable since Steven Spielberg and George Lucas both completely disowned this movie, which is kind of funny if you consider the other movies these guys have made. Another problem I have is just really poor editing. There's a lot of continuity mistakes within the movie that make it either very distracting or ruin the tension outright. The world building and overall consistency also destroys the tension. For example, the rules of the cult change depending on what the writers want. The kid clearly says that he will be forced to drink the blood of Kali like every other kid, but then the cult forgets to give it to Shorty, and then it's revealed that none of these children had to take it, because Shorty doesn't have to burn them alive. Speaking of burning alive, there is nothing in the movie to suggest that this is the way you free someone from the spell. The kid specifically says there's nothing you can do, and then Shorty is just like, nah, let me cook, and burns Indy. By the way, this is something that's explained in the original script, along with some other changes that I've already mentioned. Along with that, Shorty and the Maharaja were supposed to have a pretty cool rivalry throughout the film. There was supposed to be a scene after the dinner scene where the Maharaja was playing around with Indy's whip, and Shorty was not having it. And honestly, it would have made this shot more satisfying. There's also cult rules being broken, with Willie not having her heart ripped out and just surviving the entire experience, even though she should have been evaporated, but you know what? Whatever. Indiana Jones feels pretty out of character in this movie. I know I made some jokes during the plot summary that were based on moralism and pointed out what a terrible person Indy was, but I want to clarify that I understand that Indy has been a terrible person off the rip in the first movie. He got down with a 15-year-old Marion, so yeah. What I want to stress is that Indy's more questionable qualities spread into his intelligence in this movie and make him a moron because of this. The biggest example of this is that he drags Willie around the entire movie even though she's completely useless to him after he gets the antidote from her. Even Short Round should be pretty useless since he brought him to a place where kids have been kidnapped, and if Indy cared about him he wouldn't bring him, but Indy has a terrible definition of what caring is, so whatever. Every stupid thing Shorty does is placed on Indy because it was his decision to bring the child along for the ride. Also, he's pretty stupid when it comes to his own profession. For example, during this dinner scene, he never thinks, hey, this menu's a bit crazy. You would think that the guy that studies in anthropology would know that Hindus are vegan and acknowledge that. By the way, this is something that the original script points out. His character arc isn't the greatest either when it comes to the way it's articulated. He makes the decision to give the village the rock, but we're never seen the switch in his head. Honestly, he could have entered this mission with that mindset and I would believe it. His arc goes something like this. Act 1. Hey, I'm Indiana Jones. I steal women, kidnap children, and I'm gonna steal this rock for fortune and glory. Act 2. Act 3. Hey, I'm Indiana Jones. I steal women, kidnap children, and I'm gonna give this rock to the people of the village because I respect their culture. And that's pretty much it, but this is ignoring the fact that his arc means nothing in this movie. Considering that his arc is, I will respect people's culture and not steal their treasures for my own glory. And then you go to the very next scene canonically, and we see that Indiana Jones is once again stealing treasure for his own glory. So when people say there's no arc for Indy in this movie, that's what they mean. And honestly, he could have still stolen the stone anyway, because the village is completely fine even before they are in possession of it. Their fields are plentiful, the foliage is green and healthy, and all the kids have returned safely to their homes. So I would argue that this goes against Indy's character. I fully believe that a man who takes women and children into the line of fire and puts them in dangerous situations for no reason and colludes with Chinese mafias and says the line, fortune and glory, would steal a magic rock for, you know, fortune and glory?
What for? They'd just put it in a museum, it'd be another rock collecting dust.
My brother in Christ, did you see what it was capable of 5 minutes ago? Or the fact that a long-thought dead cult came back and started worshipping it once again in order to take over the world? Don't you think that sounds pretty historically groundbreaking? Also, if the cult comes back again, it's not such a good idea to give this rock back to the village considering how easy it was for them to steal it, and mainly because if the stone is unified with the other 4 stones, it will destroy the world? Maybe we should keep this powerful stone somewhere safe and secure, like a museum, or even an anonymous government vault, in order to keep that from happening. But no, it's just another rock in the collection. God, Indy, why are you like this? Willie Scott is the most annoying character in all of fiction. She starts out fine, but becomes a nuisance pretty quickly. The other female characters in the trilogy at least have something to offer in terms of what they can assist Indy with, even if one's a Nazi. But Willie just provides the team with nothing. What the writers want to do is have a character that's very clearly a pampered city girl that isn't familiar with nature and hates it. But through this experience, she gains a new respect for it. Now, I understand that that's the point of the character, but the execution is terrible. And before any of you goblins start typing in the comments saying, oh, she didn't scream that much, she screamed for a total of 72 times. How does one scream that much? Steven, what were you thinking? Short Round is the best character in the movie, and that's not even close. Goodbye. And there we are, the complete breakdown of Temple of Doom. Well, I think that went well. Would it be strange to say that I like this movie now? I might have come down with Stockholm Syndrome like Willie did. I went into the script knowing I hated this movie, but through watching it more and more, I've grown to enjoy it. I might just be coping though. In fact, I've grown to appreciate Crusade and Raiders even more now compared to how I did beforehand. I even enjoy Crystal Skull now, mostly because me and my friends put it in black and white, and if you do that, it looks crazy good. And nope, not you, Dial. You can still burn in hell. Get back into the goblin hole you came from. I hope Malaram rips out your heart. So you're probably thinking, why? Why would I go down the path of completely destroying a beloved movie for no other reason than the fact that I love doing it? Well, there's a couple of things. The first being the thing that I talked about in the intro, and that is the saying, there are only 3 Indiana Jones movies. And again, this is laughable to me considering how this movie turned out, and that saying screams inconsistent standards to me. And what's funnier is that these people go on and make fun of Crystal Skull without even contemplating the idea that, hey, maybe this movie I like has the same issues and even worse contrivances than this movie that I clown on. It's like Clone Wars fans laughing at a show like Rebels for being bad, even though the show that they praise has even more of the same issues to an even greater extent than the show that they clown on. Frankly, it's just coping, and it's humorous to me. If I were to make a clear 3-movie arc for Indy, it would be Raiders, Crusade, and Skull, because there's actually good character stuff in Skull. And that's something that Temple barely has. And honestly, I wouldn't even say that there's only 3 Indiana Jones movies, because that line of thinking is just stupid. Breaking news, guys, there's 5 Indiana Jones movies, and only 2 of them are good. Sorry to burst your bubble. It's like how there's 12 Star Wars movies and only 3 of them are good. It's just like how there's 33 MCU movies and only like 7 of them are good. Sadly, we live in a world where consistency and striving to do our best is not a foundation of storytelling. Get used to it, kids. It only gets worse from here. Another cope defense I see a lot is when people say, oh, Temple of Doom is such a great and incredible and perfect action-adventure movie. And then I point out the flaws in said action and adventure, and they say, oh, well, you're not supposed to think about it that hard. And this statement boils down to a general consensus that a considerable amount of people have towards the Indy franchise, and that is if you break down the Indiana Jones movies with any critical thought, then they all fall apart. And to be honest, that's incredibly disrespectful to Raiders and Crusade, and storytelling in general. This line of thinking has been thought by too many people, and I'm tired of it. Yes, some pieces of media fall apart under critical analysis, but some stories hold up incredibly well, and that's why they're great. And in the case of Raiders and Crusade, I know they hold up, because I tried. Editor, can you pull up the very cringe and incriminating clip from my Dial of Destiny video? I decided to go rewatch the original 4, to relive childhood memories, and also see if they hold up. And do they? No!
So he's an idiot.
Raiders is okay, it's pretty mid, honestly. Yeah, I don't know what that version of Andrew was smoking, but I was just wrong. Raiders is not a 6. It is at the least an 8. And it's not even an 8. It's a 9. And the only thing better than a 9 is a 10. And that's what Crusade is. It's perfect. Every joke hits, every song slaps. Absolute cinema. I have no idea what I was smoking. Crack. It was probably crack. And digging into Temple of Doom showed me how good those other 2 movies are, and showed me why they are great. They properly establish characters and what they mean in relation to Indy. It knows what setup and payoff are, not only for its humor and action, but also for its story. It knows what it can get away with, and Indy isn't a bumbling idiot the entire time. And they all just look so much better, man. But anyway, that's all I got for today. Remember to subscribe. So, yeah, that's it.